I stepped into the courtroom, the familiar weight of the robe on my shoulders and the scent of floor polish and stale coffee in the air. It's a smell I know better than my own living room. Bird gave his usual booming announcement. The crowd settled, and I took my seat. My eyes scanned the litigants. It's a 2-second process. You learn everything you need to know in those 2 seconds. On my left, the plaintiff, a woman in her late 30s, neat, professional, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked terrified but prepared. She had a folder. I like folders. Folders mean facts. On my right was the defendant, early 20s, dressed in something that probably cost more than the plaintiff's car, and she was busy looking at her phone, not even trying to hide it. That's a special kind of stupid, to disrespect the one person who holds your financial fate in her hands before you've even said a word. She had an air about her, an unearned confidence that screamed, "Daddy's money." My internal baloney meter was already in the red. I put on my glasses and picked up the file. This is case number 724. The plaintiff is Maria Flores. The defendant is Tiffany Sinclair. Miss Flores is suing Miss Sinclair for $5,000 for unpaid event planning services. I looked up over the rim of my glasses directly at the defendant. Miss Sinclair, would you be so kind as to join us in the real world and put the phone away? She looked up, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes, as if I just asked her to do something utterly unreasonable. She slowly, dramatically, slipped the phone into a purse that looked like it could make a down payment on a house. "All right, Miss Flores," I said, turning to the woman with the folder. "Your turn. Make it simple. What happened?" She stood up straight. "Your Honor, I own a small event planning business. Miss Sinclair hired me to plan her 21st birthday party. The theme was opulence. We signed a contract for a total of $15,000. She paid a $10,000 deposit. The final $5,000 was due the day after the event. The party happened. I have not been paid the balance. Clear, concise. I like it. Do you have a copy of this contract?" "Yes, Your Honor." She opened her pristine folder and handed a copy to Bird, who brought it to me. I scanned it. Standard agreement, clear scope of work, clear payment schedule, signatures at the bottom. I looked back at the defendant, who was now examining her fingernails. "Miss Sinclair," I said, my voice flat, "is this your signature on the bottom of this document?" She glanced at it. "I guess. I don't really remember. I sign a lot of things." "Oh, you do you?" I thought. "Let's see how you feel about signing a check today." "You guess? Don't be a wise guy. It's a simple question. Did you or did you not sign a contract agreeing to pay Miss Flores $15,000 for her services? Yes or no?" "Yes," she said, rolling her eyes. "But the service was awful. It was a disaster." "A disaster." Of course it was. Whenever someone doesn't want to pay a bill, the service was suddenly the worst they've ever had. "A disaster," I repeated. "Tell me about this disaster. What happened? Did the roof cave in? Did the band get food poisoning? Did a meteor strike the dance floor?" She scoffed. "No. The vibes were just off." I stared at her. I let the silence hang in the air for a full 10 seconds. "The vibes," I said, deadpan. "You're telling me you're withholding a $5,000 payment, which this woman needs to run her business and probably feed her family because the vibes were off? The flowers weren't the right shade of pink," she added, as if this was a critical piece of evidence. "I asked for millennial pink, and they were more of a bubblegum pink. It was tacky. It ruined the entire aesthetic." I leaned forward. My patience, which is a very limited resource to begin with, was wearing thin. "Did you bring a picture of these aesthetically offensive flowers?" "I shouldn't have to. She was the professional. She should have known." "So you have no proof," I stated. "You just have your opinion that the pink wasn't millennial enough. What else? What other catastrophic failures of party planning occurred?" The DJ played the wrong version of a song. I just looked at her. "And for that, Miss Flores should forfeit $5,000 of her earned income?" "It was part of a whole pattern of incompetence," she insisted, her voice rising. She was finally getting animated. The bored facade was cracking, and the entitled brat was emerging. She was supposed to handle everything, and it just wasn't up to my standards. Your standards, I said. And what standards are those? The standards of a 21-year-old whose primary problem in life is the specific hue of a flower? Miss Flores, did she complain to you on the night of the party? No, Your Honor. She told me, and I have the text message, that it was the best party ever. My head snapped back to the defendant. Is that true, Miss Sinclair? Did you send a text message after the party, a party you are now calling a disaster, telling the plaintiff it was the best party ever? Her face flushed. I was just being nice. I didn't want to cause a scene. Oh, you didn't want to cause a scene then, but you're happy to cause one now in a nationally televised courtroom? I said, Miss Flores, show me that text message. As Bird collected the phone, I looked at the defendant's file again. I saw the address. I saw the notation from my producer. Miss Sinclair, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Your father is Charles Sinclair, the mayor of this city. Is that correct? She straightened up, a smug smile spreading across her face. Finally, the card she'd been waiting to play. Yes, she said, her voice dripping with significance. He is. I see, I said, my eyes narrowing. And do you think that means something in here? It just means, she said, leaning into her microphone, that I'm used to a certain level of quality, and I know when I'm being taken advantage of. I laughed, a short, sharp, humorless sound. Oh, sweetheart, I said, looking directly into her eyes. You have no idea what being taken advantage of looks like, but you're about to find out. I took the plaintiff's phone from Bird. The text message was right there on the screen, clear as day, and that's when I noticed the timestamp. That's when her entire story fell apart. The screen glowed in my hand. Miss Flores, what time did this party end? I asked, not taking my eyes off the phone. Around 2 a.m., Your Honor. 2 in the morning, I repeated. And Miss Sinclair claims she sent this text to be polite, to not cause a scene at the end of a long night. Is that your story, Miss Sinclair? You were just trying to be a gracious hostess? Exactly, she said, nodding, a triumphant little smirk on her face. She thought she'd found a plausible out. Some people think if they just repeat a lie with enough confidence, it magically becomes the truth. It doesn't work that way. Not in the real world, and certainly not in here. I looked up from the phone and locked my eyes on hers. Then can you explain to me why you sent this text message, the one that says, oh my God, Tiff's B-Day, bash was epic, best party ever, 10th a million, at 10:42 the following morning? The smirk vanished. It didn't just fade, it was wiped clean off her face, replaced by a slack-jawed panic. The gallery murmured, Bird shifted his weight. That's the sound of a lie dying. She stammered. There was no scene to avoid at 10:42 a.m., was there? I pressed on, my voice like a hammer striking a nail. Miss Flores wasn't standing in your bedroom, was she? You weren't surrounded by guests, were you? No. You were probably lying in bed, scrolling through pictures of your disastrous party with the wrong colored flowers, and you took the time to compose and send that message. The party was over. The social obligation was over. The only thing left was the truth. And the truth, according to you, at 10:42 a.m. was that it was the best party ever. Is that not correct? She was cornered, a trapped animal, and trapped animals get vicious. You're twisting my words, she shrieked, her voice suddenly shrill and ugly. I'm not twisting anything, I shot back. I'm reading. It's a skill you should try to pick up sometime. It's called literacy. These are your words. You sent them. You can't unsend them in my courtroom. This is ridiculous. The service was terrible. I'm not paying for terrible service. You're not paying because you're a spoiled brat who thinks daddy's title lets you rip people off. That was the spark. Her face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Her carefully constructed image of bored sophistication shattered into a million pieces. Do you know who I am? She screamed, pointing a finger at me, her whole body trembling. I leaned back, a cold calm settling over me. This is the moment I always wait for. The moment the mask doesn't just slip, it's ripped off, and I get to see the real person underneath. And what I saw was not pretty. I know exactly who you are, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You're a defendant in my courtroom, and right now, you're a defendant who's about to lose. You have a contract. You received the service. You expressed your satisfaction in writing. You owe the money. This is the simplest case I've had all day. No, she bellowed, her voice echoing in the silent room. My father is the mayor. He runs this city. He could have your job in a second. A gasp went through the audience. Bird took a step forward. I held up a hand to stop him. Oh no, she wasn't getting out of this that easily. I let her words hang in the air, a testament to her own stupidity. I let her see the reaction on the faces in the gallery, shock, disgust. I let her feel the full weight of the hole she had just dug for herself. My job? I said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my face. Sweetheart, your father couldn't get my job if he had a map and a team of bloodhounds. My job is earned. It's not handed out like a party favor at a Sweet 16. And then she said it. The line that would make this case a classic. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing with a kind of madness born of pure privilege. I own you, she screamed, spit flying from her mouth. My family owns this whole city. We own the cops. We own the judges. We own you. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of 100 people simultaneously losing all respect for one person. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I let my disgust do the talking. Judgment for the plaintiff? I said, my voice like ice. $5,000. I slammed the gavel down. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. She just stood there, hyperventilating, her chest heaving. You can't do that. I just did, I said, pointing my pen at her. You are a disgrace. You're a disgrace to your family, you're a disgrace to your father's office, and you are an embarrassment to the human race. You think because your father runs the city, the rules don't apply to you? Let me tell you something. In this room, I am the law, and your father's name doesn't mean a thing to me except to confirm my suspicion that you have never been held accountable for anything in your entire miserable, entitled life. Well, that ends today. She opened her mouth to scream again, but I was done. I had heard enough. That's it. We're finished here, I said, looking directly at my bailiff. Bird, get her out. Bird moved with a speed and purpose that could make a statue nervous. He's a big man, and when he walks with that kind of authority, people get out of the way. But Tiffany Sinclair, in her bubble of delusion, seemed to think she was immune. She planted her feet, a petulant toddler in couture. You can't touch me, she shrieked as Bird approached her podium. I'll have your badge. I'll have you fired. Bird didn't even flinch. He never does. He just kept coming. Ma'am, the judge has made her ruling. It's time to go. His voice was calm, a low rumble against her high-pitched hysterics. I watched from the bench. This is the part that never ceases to amaze me. The sheer inability of some people to understand that actions have consequences. She had lied, been caught in the lie, insulted the court, and then threatened an officer of that court, all on national television. And yet, in her mind, she was still the victim, a princess in a tower of her own making, wronged by the world. I am not leaving until she apologizes to me, she yelled, pointing at me again. I actually laughed, a real, genuine laugh. The absurdity was just too much. Apologize? I said, leaning into my microphone. I'll apologize when you learn the difference between millennial pink and reality. Now get out of my courtroom. As Bird reached for her arm, she did something truly idiotic. She swung her oversized, overpriced purse at him. It was a clumsy, ineffective swing, but it was an assault. The gallery gasped again, louder this time. That's a line you don't cross, ever. Bird blocked the purse with his forearm as if it were a gnat. His expression hardened. The professional calm was replaced by a look that said, "You've gone too far." He grabbed her by the upper arm, his grip firm but controlled. No, let go of me. You're hurting me, she screamed, though it was clear he was using the minimum force necessary. She was an actress playing a part, and the part was damsel in distress. The problem was, she was also the dragon. I stood up. That's it. Miss Sinclair, you are now in contempt of court. My voice boomed through the room. There was no humor left in it. Bird, escort this individual out of the building and make sure she gets a copy of the judgment so she can give it to her father. I'm sure Mayor Sinclair will be thrilled to learn how his daughter represents the family name. The mention of her father seemed to enrage her further. She began to struggle in earnest, trying to twist out of Bird's grip. You can't do this! I'll sue you! I'll sue this whole stupid show. Get in line, I muttered to myself. As Bird half walked, half dragged her towards the exit, she continued her tirade. It was a word salad of threats, insults, and brand names. It was a glimpse into a mind that had been warped by a lifetime of getting whatever it wanted, whenever it wanted it. A mind completely unprepared for a world that operates on principles of fairness and fact. The plaintiff, Miss Flores, stood at her podium, watching the whole spectacle with a mixture of terror and vindication. She looked small and vulnerable next to the hurricane of entitlement that was Tiffany Sinclair. But Miss Flores had something, Miss. Sinclair didn't. The truth. And in my courtroom, that's the only currency that matters. Finally, Bird got her to the big doors at the back of the courtroom. As they swung open, she turned for one last parting shot. You'll hear from my father's lawyer, she screamed, her voice hoarse. I can't wait, I called back, sitting down and smoothing my robe. I'm sure they're just as competent as his daughter. The doors closed, cutting off her final shriek. An immediate, profound silence fell over the room. It was as if everyone collectively exhaled. The tension, which had been stretched so tight it was almost a physical presence, snapped. I turned my attention back to the plaintiff, who looked like she just survived a natural disaster. Miss Flores, I said, my tone softening considerably. Are you all right? She nodded, her eyes wide. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Don't thank me, I told her. Thank your contract. Thank your text messages. Thank your folder. I tapped the file on my desk. You came in here prepared. You had facts. The defendant came in here with a fantasy. In the end, facts always win. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Good. You will receive a judgment for the full $5,000. It may take some effort to collect it, but the law is on your side. If you have any trouble, let the court know. I gave her a small nod. You are a professional. You did your job. You deserve to be paid for it. Don't ever let anyone, no matter who their father is, tell you otherwise. You're dismissed. She gathered her things, her hands still shaking slightly, and gave me a grateful look before walking out through the side door. A decent, hard-working person who had been forced to come here because someone else thought the rules were optional. It's a story I see every single day. I took off my glasses and rubbed the bridge of my nose. The adrenaline of the confrontation was fading, replaced by a familiar weariness. It's not the cases that exhaust me, it's the stupidity. The willful, arrogant ignorance of people like Tiffany Sinclair. The belief that they can bully and bluff their way through life. It's a cancer. I looked at the empty defendant's podium. A thought crossed my mind. What would happen when she got home? Would her father, the mayor, be angry? Would he be embarrassed? Or would he enable her hire a team of lawyers to fight a $5,000 judgment and teach her the worst lesson of all? That with enough money and power, you can get away with anything? Somehow, I suspected I knew the answer. And that was the most depressing part of the whole affair. My ruling today held one person accountable, but the system that created her, that was a much bigger fight. And it was a fight that would continue long after the camera stopped rolling. I picked up the next file. Next case! Stepping into my chambers during the break, the quiet felt strange, almost unnerving after the cacophony of the Sinclair case. My producer, a man who has seen more human drama than a Shakespearean scholar, was waiting for me. He had a look on his face I knew well, a mix of excitement and mild alarm. "That was something, Judge," he said, handing me a bottle of water. "It was a mess," I corrected, unscrewing the cap. "A spoiled child threw a tantrum because she had to pay her bills. Story as old as time." "The phones are already ringing," he said. "A few local news outlets. They want to comment on the mayor's daughter incident." "My comment is on the tape," I said flatly. "I said everything I needed to say in there. Tell them to watch the show. I wasn't interested in a media circus. My job is to resolve disputes, not to provide sound bites for the 6 o'clock news." Though I had a feeling this case would be leading the broadcast tonight. He nodded, knowing better than to press. "I just thought you should know. Charles Sinclair is a powerful man. Powerful men have children, and sometimes those children are idiots." "This is not a new phenomenon," I replied, taking a long drink of water. I looked past him, out the window. "The problem isn't the mayor. The problem is the princess. He created a monster of entitlement, and today the monster got loose and stomped all over my courtroom. He's the one who should be commenting, not me. He should be issuing a public apology." But I knew he wouldn't. People like that rarely do. They double down. They attack. It's a playbook, as predictable as it is pathetic. The rest of the day's cases were a blur of petty squabbles, a dispute over a veterinarian bill for a cat that may or may not have been sick, 2 roommates arguing over a security deposit, the usual parade of human folly. But I couldn't shake the Sinclair girl. Her shriek of "I own you" echoed in the back of my mind. It wasn't just arrogance. It was a worldview. A deeply broken, toxic worldview that sees other people not as human beings, but as objects to be controlled or commodities to be purchased. When I got home that evening, I did something I rarely do. I turned on the local news. And there it was. A grainy cell phone video, probably from someone in the gallery, of Tiffany Sinclair being dragged out of the courtroom by Bird. Her face was red, her mouth a perfect O of fury. It was ugly, it was raw, and it was exactly what happened. Then they cut to a press conference. There was Mayor Sinclair standing behind a podium, a phalanx of flags behind him, his face a mask of practiced solemnity. He looked like a man trying to project gravitas while his house was on fire. "My daughter is a passionate young woman," he began, and I rolled my eyes so hard I almost gave myself a headache. Passionate? Is that what we're calling it now? She felt she had been taken advantage of by a vendor, and she expressed her frustration. Perhaps she did so inartfully. Inartfully was doing a lot of work in that sentence. A bulldozer is inartful. A hurricane is inartful. His daughter was a menace. However, he continued, his tone shifting. He was moving from defense to offense. Predictable. "I am deeply concerned by the conduct I witnessed in that courtroom. The judge appeared to be hostile and biased from the outset. It raises serious questions about whether a citizen, any citizen, can receive a fair hearing in that environment." I snorted. There it was, the pivot. His daughter wasn't the problem. I was. He was going to attack the process because he couldn't defend the facts. It's the last refuge of the guilty. The next day, it was a full-blown storm. The story was everywhere. Mayor slams TV judge. Fairness or farce? The Judge Judy debate. My producers were fielding calls from everyone. Lawyers, looking for their 15 minutes of fame, were lining up to offer their opinions. Some defended me, talking about the need for order in the court. Others, smelling opportunity, sided with the mayor. They prattled on about judicial temperament and decorum. Decorum. It's a lovely word. It's also a wonderful shield for liars. People who want to spin complicated tales and hide behind jargon hate my courtroom because I don't allow it. I demand simplicity. I demand the truth. And the truth, by its very nature, is often indecorous. It's messy and uncomfortable. Tiffany Sinclair's behavior was indecorous. Her sense of entitlement was indecorous. Her blatant attempt to defraud a small business owner was indecorous. My reaction was a direct response to her indecorum. A few days later, a letter arrived at the studio. Thick, creamy paper, an embossed letterhead with the official city seal. It was from the mayor's office. It wasn't a check for Miss Flores. It was a formal complaint penned by a team of city attorneys alleging judicial misconduct and demanding an on-air apology to Miss Sinclair for the emotional distress and public humiliation she had suffered. I read it, a grim smile on my face. Emotional distress. She screamed like a banshee and tried to assault a court officer, but she was the one who suffered emotional distress. The audacity was almost impressive. I picked up the phone and called my executive producer. Tell the mayor's office I have received their letter, I said, my voice calm and clear. And tell them my response is this. I will apologize to Miss Sinclair on the air. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Judge, are you serious? Absolutely, I said. I will apologize right after she pays Miss Flores the $5,000 she owes her in cash and delivers it to her personally and apologizes for trying to cheat her. Once that happens, I will be more than happy to go on television and discuss the inartful nature of our exchange. I hung up the phone. The ball was back in their court. Let's see how Mayor Sinclair, the man so concerned with fairness, would handle a proposition that was nothing but checkmate. The silence from the mayor's office was deafening. For a week, nothing. The news cycle, ravenous as ever, moved on to the next shiny object, the next manufactured outrage. The story of the mayor's daughter faded from the headlines. But in my world, the case wasn't closed. A judgment had been entered. A debt was owed. This wasn't about headlines. It was about a check for $5,000 that a hardworking woman was entitled to. Then a call came through to my producer. It wasn't from the mayor or his army of lawyers. It was from Maria Flores, the plaintiff. She sounded flustered, almost frightened. Judge, my producer said, patching the call through to my office speaker. Miss Flores is on the line. She says 2 men in suits are at her apartment. I straightened in my chair. Put her on. Your Honor? Her voice was shaky. I'm so sorry to bother you. There are 2 men here. They say they're from the mayor's office. They want to negotiate the judgment. My blood ran cold. Negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. A judgment is not an opening offer. It's a legal order. This was intimidation, plain and simple. Sending 2 city hall sharks to the home of a woman who runs a small business out of her apartment. It was a classic power play, designed to bully her into accepting less than she was owed, to make her feel small and helpless. Miss Flores, listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice firm and loud enough for anyone else in that room to hear. You do not have to speak with them. Tell them that all communication must go through the court. Tell them their presence at your private residence is unwelcome and constitutes harassment. Tell them to leave immediately. There was a muffled sound, Miss Flores relaying my message. Then a man's voice, arrogant and smooth. That's not necessary. We just want to have a quick chat, resolve this amicably. I leaned into the speaker. This is Judge Judy, I said, my voice slicing through the air. Who am I speaking with? A startled pause. This is Arthur Vance from the city's legal department. Mr. Vance, I said, spacing my words out for maximum impact. You are an officer of the court. Are you not aware that it is highly improper to approach a litigant at their home to negotiate a court-ordered judgment? Are you trying to intimidate this woman? Of course not, Judge. We're just trying to expedite payment. We have a check for her. A check for how much? I demanded. We are prepared to offer Miss Flores $2,500 to settle this matter today, to avoid any further unpleasantness. The sheer nerve of it. After all that, after a public meltdown and a legal ruling, they were trying to chisel her out of half the money. Unbelievable. Unpleasantness? I repeated, my voice dripping with contempt. You mean the unpleasantness of paying what your client legally owes? Here's the deal, Mr. Vance. You have 60 seconds to get out of Miss Flores's home. If you are still there in 61 seconds, I'm calling the district attorney and filing a complaint for witness intimidation and contempt of court. And believe me, the DA takes my calls. The clock is ticking. I could hear frantic whispering. Miss Flores came back on the line. They're leaving, Your Honor. They're leaving right now. Thank you. She was crying, a mix of relief and fear. You did nothing wrong, Miss Flores, I told her, my fury simmering. You stood up for yourself. You hang tight. I'll handle this. I hung up and immediately dialed my producer. Get me Mayor Charles Sinclair on the phone. Not his assistant, not his lawyer. Him. Tell him it's not a request. 10 minutes later, the call came through. Judge, he said. His voice was guarded, stripped of the false sincerity from his press conference. This was the real man. Don't you judge me, Charles, I snapped. What in God's name do you think you're doing, sending your legal thugs to harass a citizen in her own home? Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I assure you, that was not my intent. My people were simply trying to resolve the matter efficiently. Efficiently? By trying to cheat her out of half the money a court of law ordered your daughter to pay? That's your idea of efficiency? It sounds more like extortion to me. Now, let's not be dramatic. I will be as dramatic as I please, I thundered. You went on television and questioned my fairness. You talked about the rights of the citizen. And the moment the cameras were off, you sent your goons to trample on the rights of a citizen who did nothing but her job. You are a hypocrite of the highest order. He was silent. For once, he had no spin, no prepared statement. Here's what's going to happen, I said, taking control. You are going to have a certified check for $5,000 delivered to this courthouse by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, not to Miss Flores' home, to me. And with it, you are going to include a written letter of apology to her, an apology for your daughter's behavior and for the despicable actions of your legal department. If I do not have that check and that letter on my desk by 9/1, I am holding a press conference of my own. And I will play the audio of your lawyer trying to strong-arm Miss Flores, and I will read your ridiculous letter demanding an apology from me. I will lay out the entire sordid story of how the mayor's office uses taxpayer resources to bully its own constituents. Is that clear? The silence stretched on. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, calculating the political damage. Crystal, he finally said, his voice tight with barely concealed rage. Good, I said, and hung up. The next morning at 8:45 a.m., a nervous-looking courier delivered a large envelope to my chambers. Inside was a certified check for $5,000 made out to Maria Flores, and underneath it, a single sheet of paper with the mayor's letterhead. It was a stiff, formally worded apology. It was devoid of any real remorse, but it met my terms. I had the check messengered over to Miss Flores immediately. When she called to thank me, the relief in her voice was palpable. She wasn't just relieved about the money. She was relieved that the system, which seemed so rigged against her, had actually worked. Someone had listened. Someone had fought for her. I kept the letter. I pinned it to the bulletin board in my office. A reminder that sometimes the fight doesn't end when the gavel falls. A reminder that people with power will always try to bend the rules to their will. And a reminder that it's my job, my absolute non-negotiable job, to not let them. The mayor and his daughter wanted a war. They got one, and they lost.
This courtroom narrative delivers a sharp, emotionally charged commentary on power, privilege, and accountability, unfolding in a televised small claims setting where a disciplined judge presides over a dispute between a hard-working event planner and a wealthy, entitled young defendant. The plaintiff presents a clear contractual case backed by documentation and messages, while the defendant relies on arrogance, vague complaints about standards, and the assumption that her father's political position can shield her from consequences. As the hearing escalates, the judge systematically dismantles her claims with evidence, exposing contradictions such as her own text praising the event after calling it a disaster. The tone intensifies as privilege clashes with procedure, especially when the defendant attempts to invoke her father's authority, only to be reminded that influence has no weight in the courtroom. The situation further escalates when outside interference from the mayor's office attempts to undermine the legal judgment by pressuring the plaintiff to accept a reduced settlement, revealing a deeper abuse of institutional power. The judge responds with uncompromising firmness, reinforcing the boundaries of law and rejecting intimidation tactics, ultimately forcing full compliance with the ruling. Beyond the drama, the narrative emphasizes a larger theme. Systems of justice depend on evidence, not entitlement, and fairness requires constant defense against those who assume immunity through wealth or status. The plaintiff's eventual victory represents not just financial restitution, but moral validation, while the defendant's downfall highlights how unchecked privilege can collapse under scrutiny. The judge's final reflections add a sobering layer, suggesting that while one case is resolved, the broader struggle between accountability and influence persists. Overall, it is a forceful cinematic commentary that frames the courtroom as a battleground where truth, discipline, and law confront arrogance, manipulation, and inherited power, ultimately affirming that facts, when properly upheld, still outweigh status in the pursuit of justice.